So you've spent decades building your investment accounts, monitoring the markets, contributing to your 401k, watching the cash balance pension rise. But here's the truth. You're not ready for retirement if that's all that you've done. Retirement planning isn't just about the portfolio, albeit that's important, but it's about so much more. In today's episode, we're going to dive into all those non-investment decisions that can make or break your retirement. Let me grab Walt and we'll dive right on in.
Hey, welcome to another episode of Power Your Retirement. I'm Walter Osterholt alongside Steve Smith. He is a certified financial planner and the perfect person to talk to about today's topic. Sure, he would be the perfect person to talk to about your portfolio as well, but now we're going to zoom out and look at some of the non-portfolio items that tell us whether or not you're ready to retire. Steve, I'm looking forward to this. I have to imagine, I don't know, maybe it's 50-50 for you, but are you like, hey, I love the numbers and kind of the geekier side of being a financial advisor? Or do you really like some of this softer stuff where you get to talk about the looser ends of financial planning with your clients?
Well, I enjoy all of the numbers and the markets and the stocks and the strategies and all of that. But this is why I do this, is that engagement. This is fun.
Yeah.
Because it helps people, it opens their eyes. And normally people they like seeing the retirement plan and how it all works out and all the numbers and all the graphs. But when we have this conversation, it kind of takes the blinders away that, so yeah, we got to talk about that because, we want to do this, that, or the other. This is really some of my most engaging and usually fun conversations.
Nice. Well, let's dive into them. Again, if you have your 401k, your IRA, whatever your investment accounts and that kind of core part of your portfolio are, fantastic. Got plenty of episodes that talk about topics like that. We're looking outside of that box, though, on today's episode. And so the first one to mention here, Steve, is lifestyle. So what does that mean to you as a financial advisor? And why do you think we haven't prepared for retirement if we haven't deeply thought about this part of the puzzle?
Well, people are in the accumulation or working mode. They go on certain vacations. They have certain things that the family does when the kids are around and they leave, and they have this rhythm to the family. But that isn't always the rhythm that's desired in retirement. And sometimes that costs less, and sometimes that costs more. And that lifestyle, just that general spending habits, if they've worked with me for a very long time, I know a lot of their current ones. But I had Darren, love this couple, and his wife. They just loved to travel. They didn't even talk about it a lot. They would go on an annual vacation. And yeah, of course, everybody talks about their vacation. But they have this desire to travel the world. And thankfully, they told me about this. We had these conversations way, way, way long before they retired a few years ago. But they wanted to go see Asia and Australia, New Zealand, all through Europe, all over the place, South America, and they're living it. They actually travel about half time now, which is insane to me. But that would be tiring. But to them, it's invigorating and amazing. And we put it together, and he actually worked probably 2 years longer than what he wanted to in order to have that budget to go see the world until they can't. So they're hoping to do that for 5 or 10 years. So those are things that really can impact. If I would have just planned for their normal lifestyle, it probably wouldn't have went well. Also,
you talked about it being tiring. It just made me think of the folks that retired to cruise lines, right? And they just did like 10-day cruises, and then they'd switch to a different cruise ship. And so they didn't have a house. They didn't have to pay rent anywhere. It was just, they didn't have to go buy food ever. It was all just cruise. And they strung it together for like a year straight. And I was like, that sounds really cool on one hand. It sounds exhausting on another.
Absolutely. So retirement hobbies, I want to talk about that too, because travel is a big one, and hobbies can actually dovetail to that, but it can be separate as well. And a lot of people want to buy an RV, but RVs are expensive, especially if you want to travel the entire country and get a fairly new, reliable one that isn't going to leave you on the side of the road. So this can cost hundreds of thousands of dollars, if depending on what you get. And then also maintaining a house, because you would still have all of those expenses, and you've got this portable house. So if you want to do that for a large portion of the year, and maintenance and upkeep and purchasing it, that can really put a dent into a retirement plan if it isn't in there. In fact, it can create a domino effect, actually, to shorten the back end of it, which is not what we want, for sure. And those are probably the two main offenders, if they're not properly planned for, that can really put a dent and a damper on a retirement plan, for sure.
Yeah. And I know something you and I always are talking about is physical activity and getting in shape and exercising. But what are the two times that often distract from that ability to execute our game plans when it comes to working out and being physically active, Steve? Hobbies or things that we're, other commitments we've got on our plate, and travel. It's really hard to sometimes to be physically active when you're traveling and seeing people and doing stuff. So if you're doing a whole bunch of that in retirement, now that physical activity part might be a little tougher than normal to keep up with. So I throw that another lifestyle element to kind of work into this whole mix too, to make sure that you've got a plan for that in retirement.
Definitely. I was just on a big tour visiting different clients and companies that we work with in St. Louis, Chicago, and Milwaukee. I didn't get as much CrossFit time in. A little bit of hotel run once in a while, but it definitely put some strain on it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's talk about the next item here. So it's not all lifestyle stuff, it's not all the softer stuff, but Social Security would be next on the list. This is different from your 401k and your IRA. This gets its own category and is another thing that if you haven't really taken a close look at how you're going to execute Social Security, big red flag in terms of your preparedness for retirement.
It's really big. And a lot of times people don't know how to optimize and maximize Social Security. A lot of people will say, well, I want to turn it on just in case I don't get anything, because they hear on the news that it's going to be bankrupted such and such a day and those types of things. So I understand that sentiment, but I highly encourage everyone to do it, a little more thoughtfully than that, if possible. If they have plenty of extra funds outside of it, then whatever, it doesn't matter. But if it's a strategic part of a retirement plan for that particular couple or individual, we definitely want to take a look at it, because there's some really significant issues with not planning for it. For one, a lot of times, it doesn't always happen, but sometimes people will want to do a short stint of making money. Maybe that's some consulting, or they come back with a contractor because they want to buy, something that wasn't planned for. That's another nice little thing we talk about, so they can use their expertise to do that. But if you've turned on your Social Security, now you're going to get penalized. So now all of a sudden that strategy doesn't look quite as good as what it did. So for those that are doing that, also, if you've had a spouse that made significantly less than you, or was a stay-at-home person, or they were, maybe a majority of it was stayed at home and they worked part-time, or they worked full-time for only a handful of years, their Social Security is significantly less. Well, if you wait till 67, okay, and then when they turn theirs on and the same, they're going to get 50% of yours, even if theirs is only 10% of yours. So that's free money that you want to plan for, and you still will get it if you turn it on at 62. It'll just be greatly diminished, and those are just dollars that are just missed. Another issue that comes up all the time is they'll wait till 70 to turn it on, and then assuming that they get 50% of what's at 70. Well, that's not true either. They get 50% at 67, the spouse does, even if you waited till 70. So yours is higher, but theirs doesn't go up for you waiting. That's a big surprise for folks that aren't working with a financial advisor like myself.
That's an interesting nuance. Let's lump into this conversation pensions as well, since that's kind of what Social Security is anyway. But then people have private pensions that we need to be focused on a little bit.
For sure. And a lot of times these aren't really evaluated, because when we have with pensions, lump sum is not just the end all be all. For some situations, that annuity might make sense. It might make sense to use the company annuity, or you might roll it out and get a private one that's got some more flexibility that pays out to beneficiaries. It's good to evaluate it. And it doesn't matter that, one or the other is really very rarely chosen. But if it fits your situation, not doing that evaluation can hurt you significantly. And that is something that should always be done, is weighing that out to see if that lump sum is good or if we should take some kind of fixed income for life.
Again, we're talking about things outside of just your traditional 401k, work plan, IRAs, those sorts of core central portfolio items. What else do we need to look at to make sure you're ready for retirement? And if you haven't thought about home-related issues, that's another red flag and something to be aware of that we need to think through. But this comes in a couple of different shapes and sizes, right?
It does. Home-related issues. So if you're just wanting to move from a city to a more rural, if you've lived in a city, sometimes people want to have a little slower retirement, and others that have lived rural want some of the advantages of the city. That's not always how that works, but some things, and the pricing can be very different to the advantage and to the non-advantage. So some people might move to a state that that has lower taxes, but if it has lower taxes and a higher cost of the home, well, those are things we got to look. Relocating can be a really big thing, not just on the home price. It can be, tax related, things of that nature. Also, some retirees say, hey, we had all these kids. We have this big house. I don't want to clean it anymore. I don't want to manage people to clean it. I just want a smaller place. That'll just be easier for the two of us.
That very traditional sense of downsizing. Yeah.
Yes, definitely. And that happens all the time. And that's what wind at your back. But if that is really what you're desiring, then that affects, to the upside, to the plus, how the retirement plan is. And we can either, live a little higher lifestyle in retirement, if that's the case, or we can retire earlier. And you get different responses from different people. And ultimately, that's their choice, but it's my job to help people understand how this affects.
Yeah. Speaking of things that could derail a retirement, even if your 401k and your IRA and all those kinds of things are looking great, we get to this next category of health questions, and this is a biggie.
There's two different things. There's many, 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 don't get me wrong, but there's two big things that come up a lot. One is nursing care, and it's really primarily, it's for both. We want to make sure we have enough saved for that because it's expensive. And also, we need to make sure that we pay special attention if the first to die is the one that goes into nursing care for an extended period of time, because we might leave the other for 20 years. And if we really pulled down on that for nursing care, so we really have to take a solid look at how we're going to plan for nursing home. The other thing that can get people, catch them off guard, is if they're in an assisted living situation for an extended period of time that is significantly more expensive than their normal lifestyle. And that sometimes it's, when it comes to assisted living, there's really expensive and not so expensive and everything in between. But those are things that need to be talked through. And also, I'll just throw a curveball in there. A lot of these companies still, for the ones that are retiring today, maybe not the new employees, still have retirement health benefits. So not staying till 55 or 60 or whatever the plan rules are. Not anybody that I worked with, but some people did retire before that benefit came in place, or it was greatly diminished benefit, and working an extra 6 months would have drastically changed their lifestyle in retirement. So,
yeah, I know we could do a whole couple of podcasts probably just on the healthcare conversation, but yeah, just make sure it's something you're thinking through as part of also saving and all these other things that we've mentioned on the episode today. Steve, any miscellaneous items here? Any other gaps that you often see pop up that people have overlooked in their financial plans?
There are, and I have to dig for some of them. Estate planning is huge. And it's a very dynamic, maybe it's inheritance coming in. That's part of that estate planning, but also it's their estate planning and what they, what do they want to leave behind? A lot of times it's money for university, for maybe grandkids and great grandkids. Sometimes it's just, divvying it up between the children. It can be charities. Just the list goes on and on. Also, that dovetails always into tax planning. right? So those are some other gaps that people aren't always talking about.
Excellent. Well, a couple of things for you to be aware of there. Again, we could do a long episode probably on each individual one of those items, but we wanted to cover it all in one place for you to just remind you that retirement's not this one-dimensional spreadsheet, right? It's not just what's the balance of my 401k and I feel good about it and we're pulling the trigger. It's real life. It's got lifestyle questions. We've got other things that are a little bit messier than just the balance of a 401k or a work plan, like pensions, like when to choose Social Security, all these different little levers that we can pull. And that helps us focus on the bigger picture rather than just one narrow area of our financial life. So just make sure that that's the kind of planning that you're doing. If all you're doing is looking at those balances and that's the extent of your planning, even if those balances are growing and looking great, you're not as actually ready to retire as you may think. So hopefully this opens up some eyes into what really needs to be done to prepare for retirement. And if you'd like to talk in more detail about how this all works and how someone like Steve, a certified financial planner, can help you navigate all these different areas of your financial life, pick up the phone and give them a call. Get in touch by going to powerupyour401k.com. We've got that linked in the contact info in the description of today's show. You can order your retirement toolkit while you're there as well and learn the tools, learn the strategies, learn the ways that you can power up your 401k and beyond in the spirit of today's episode, Steve, right? Not just powering up the 401k, but so much more as well. So click that link, get in touch, have a conversation with Steve and the team, and make sure that you're on the right financial track. Steve, really appreciate your help guiding us through this today, and we'll talk to you next time.
All right. Thanks, Walt. Just want to remind everybody it's not just about a number. There's a lot more to it. So I look forward to talking with many of you in the future.
And there's a lot more Steve coming up on future episodes. So don't forget to hit like on today's video if you're watching on YouTube and subscribe so you never miss an episode. And until next time, we'll see you again on Power Your Retirement. This podcast is provided by Powerhouse Financial Advisors, an independent firm with advisory services offered through Parsonex Advisory Services, Inc., PAS, a federally registered investment advisor. The information provided is for informational and educational purposes only and should not be considered as personalized investment advice. PAS does not guarantee the accuracy, completeness, or suitability of this information for your specific circumstances. Investment decisions should be based on an individual's goals, time horizon, and risk tolerance. Past performance is not indicative of future results, and all investments carry a degree of risk, including the potential loss of principal. Any case studies, testimonials, or endorsements shared in this podcast are illustrative of individual experiences and may not be representative of the experience of all clients. They do not guarantee future performance or success. You should not infer any level of assurance regarding future financial outcomes. Listeners should consult with a qualified financial, tax, or legal professional before making any investment decisions. Parsonex Advisory Services, Inc. does not provide tax or legal advice. Be sure to consult with your tax and legal professionals regarding your specific circumstances. For a copy of our Form ADV Part 2A, which provides additional information about PAS, including our advisory fees and services, please visit powerhousefinancialadvisors.com.